All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as I mentioned in the email I sent out yesterday, I had problems with the taping. I have already retaped chapter 2, in which I broke up into two parts because just for various reasons, it got broken up into two parts. Sorry about that. Now I'm going to do chapter 3, and my guess is this will only be about 15 minutes long. When I get done, I'm going to redo the lecture where we went over the beginning of the test that you will take next week. Some of you are still having problems. For both of you who had problems, I've been trying to come up with solutions. I will continue to do so during the afternoon today. But for right now, let's just quickly go over the material in Chapter 3 on Bootstrap. Now, you should all know this already. There's nothing big here. It's getbootstrap.com. All right, and the newest version is 5.3. I believe the one that we get with our ASP.NET MVC is 5.1. So I don't know what has changed between 5.1 and 5.3, but my guess is not probably a whole heck of a lot. It's not a whole new version. All right, it's a new release. So in the last chapter, as it says, we learn how to build the future value app using HTML and CSS. But with that one that we looked at, the one that we did in the last chapter, I think it does have a certain amount. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me double check here. But I believe it has a certain amount of responsiveness in it. All right. So if I grab this is the program that I went back and redid. A lot of copy and pasting from the last chapter. But if I run this and we bring it up, what you will notice when you get to a certain point, okay, so there is responsiveness in here. All right. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that it looks nice. So this is a chapter on responsive website design, or RWD. So we want to make sure that our program looks nice regardless of the medium that we're looking at it on. So we get a quick little intro to responsive web design, talk about some Bootstrap stuff, all right, how to get started, some Bootstrap classes, etc. Talk about some of the Bootstrap components and some of the nav bars. Some of the stuff I'll talk a little bit on. Other stuff I'll very quickly blush over, okay? All right, so again, responsive web design, as it says there, wants to make sure that your web apps look good regardless of the device on which it's being displayed. There are different ways of doing this. Back in the day, really the only way that you could do this was by using media queries, which are still used today. But media queries can be a little rough sometimes to work with. So frameworks such as Bootstrap have been added to the mix, okay, so that it's easier for you to create responsive web design programs. Okay, here's an example. So this maybe is how it would look on a laptop or desktop. This is how it would look on a tablet, and here's how it would look on a phone. So as it says here, a web app should adapt to every screen size. That is the hallmark of RWD, or responsive web design. Bootstrap is a way that you can do this. There are other packages you can use as well. All right. So it says here, the MVC template that you learned about the previous chapter includes a version of Bootstrap by default, which, like I said, I believe it's 5.1. It could be, it's not, it shouldn't be, the earliest it'll be is 5.0, but I don't think it's any later than that. Now, a couple things about this. We have talked about some of this in the past, not in this class, but if you're going to have a bunch of these include files, that you're going to be linking in, you're going to be bringing in Bootstrap, etc. The order does matter. So for instance, if you use Bootstrap and the popper, so if you use the bootstrap.min.js and you use the popper.min.js, popper should come before Bootstrap, because some of the Bootstrap stuff, especially the modal stuff, depends on popper. All right, we'll talk a little bit too about libman, which is the library manager, and we'll get to that in a little bit as well. And they do talk in here about making sure that you have the right paths to your files. All right, so they have in here about how you can go and add client-side libraries. Now, why is this important? Well, there's other libraries too that you can add. I mean, we've looked at Google Fonts, we've looked at Font Awesome, etc. So that's all stuff that you might at least want to think about adding. But this is what you get included by default. Again, Twitter Bootstrap 5.1, jQuery 3.5.1, and jQuery validation 1.17.0, and jQuery validation unobtrusive 3.2.11. All right, they go through the stuff in here on how you can add this. I'm not going to run through it, but if you look on that, again, I'm going to bring up that same thing. I should have left it up, but not running. This was the redo that we did in the last chapter. Well, I'm trying to bring it up anyway. There we go. Remember that all of that static type of stuff that you put in is all under your www root folder. So if I go to here and I go to www root and I go down to lib, all right, then you'll notice there's Bootstrap, there's jQuery, jQuery validation, etc. So the information, the stuff is in there. That doesn't mean it's necessarily been added to the program yet. Remember, we had to add in our own Bootstrap site project. And the other thing about that is, notice, for example, with Bootstrap, it's in a folder that's called dist. All right? So here's the CSS and here's the JS. Make sure you put the right path in there. Otherwise, the stuff that you're attempting to utilize, you won't be pathing to it correctly and it won't work. All right, with this libman, it says by convention, an ASP.NET Core MVC app stores all of its client-side libraries in www root/lib folder. I just showed you that. All right. It says, in addition, when you use the procedure in the previous figure to add client-side libraries, Visual Studio creates a libman.json file like the one shown in the figure. And you can use that as well to manage the versions that you're using. All right. And they explain that in here, and they show you what the libman is going to look like. I don't know why I'm having problems getting this thing to move, but I am. So let's refresh. I get this goofy error from Red Shelf every once in a while. Hopefully that fixed it. There we go. All right, so there is libman.json. Let's see if we've got a libman here. I don't believe we do. There's lib. There's the Bootstrap, jQuery. Well, one way we can check for sure is I can come into here and just search for it. So I'm going to search here for libman. It might be liveman. I just always called it libman. And it's not in there. But we did not add any of those extra packages in the same way that they showed right here. So we didn't go into Visual Studio, etc., and then right-click on the project name and choose Add Client-Side Library item. All right, so I think they said it was the project. Was it the project name or the solution name? Sorry. I'll click on the project name and then Add Client-Side Library item. All right, so here that is. There's Add. There's client-side library right there. So that's how you bring it up. And I believe if you add anything through there, all right, and I haven't done anything with this. Okay, But let's see, just for the heck of it. Well, let's try something. And the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to break what I've got, and that's no biggie. Let's see. I don't think it'll probably not let you just add a CDN in here. All right. That's actually the best way of doing it. So if I go out to cdnjs.com, and as an example, let's suppose that in here I want to use Font Awesome. Okay. Well, there it is. Font Awesome looks like that'd be it here. So I would come in here and copy the link tag. And then what I should be able to do is to come into my program. I don't want to break anything. So I should be able to come into my program then and put in that. So notice that's link rel equals style sheet. That should work. I guess we'll find out as we go on. Okay. But if you do it through libman, this is what you're going to have. And I believe you can go in there and you can, if you were to get a more updated version of something and put it in here, you can just change this file. So as it says, to manage client-side libraries, you can open the libman.json file and edit it to specify the correct version of your client-side libraries. All right, so there's a little bit of work on there. Now, my internet has been going in and out all morning. I hope that's not going to have any effect on anything. All right. So as it says, once you've got Bootstrap and Popper ready to go, you can enable the libraries. And it says, basically, you'll just start using them. So again, as I mentioned before, you'll have to add these, and the order does matter. So again, here's an example. You'd want to put in Popper before Bootstrap, and that's because some of the Bootstrap modal stuff depends on Popper. And they mention that in here too. And I already mentioned to you, make sure you give it the right path. They've got the dist in here. All right. Okay, getting started with Bootstrap, the classes in the Bootstrap grid system. You know that Bootstrap, the magical number in Bootstrap is 12. So 12 columns across. There is the URL I'd already shown you, and you go there to get the documentation. Bootstrap does, in my humble opinion, have excellent documentation. You basically stick stuff in a container. If you do it in a container, it's not going to take up the entire width of the screen. All right, it'll give you a little bit of margin padding on the sides. Container fluid will take up 100%. And once you come in and you've created your container, you create rows. And then inside of those rows, they contain columns. Those columns can have sizes. All right. Plus, those columns can be set up so that they have different sizes based on the type of device that's being used. Small, medium, large, or extra large. All right. And I guess there's even an extra large. Okay. And they give you some examples in here. But again, as I've already mentioned, Bootstrap uses a grid system. All rows are in a container. All columns are in a row. Each row must have no more than 12 columns. And typically it will have exactly 12 columns. Okay. And there's more in here on how the grid system works. I'll let you take a look at that yourselves. Again, Bootstrap CSS classes use rem units for sizing. A rem is similar to the M, but the rem, a rem works similarly, but its size is relative to the root rather than the current element. I thought that was backwards. I thought the rem was relative to the current element, where the M was to the root, but maybe I'm wrong. So we can always come in and grab our old friend Google here. No, the M is relative to the size of the parent. That's the M. And then the rem is to the size of the root element, as it says, your HTML element. I use rems a lot. I very rarely use M's. I don't know. I think that in many ways it's a matter of personal preference as far as what you use and how you do it. All right, Bootstrap has a lot of stuff to work with forms. By default, your forms are going to look like this, meaning that your labels are going to be left justified and will appear on above the input boxes or text input, whatever you want to call it. Excuse me, that appears below it. You don't have to do it that way. But again, that's what you get by default. So it's a vertical layout as mentioned right here. If you don't like that, you can make changes. So here is an example where you use what are called floating labels. These are the equivalent of having like a placeholder. In other words, they're grayish in color, and as soon as you click on them and start to do something, that word email or that word password will go away. You can also set them up rather than the vertical layout, which we just showed you right here. You can set them up with a horizontal layout, kind of more standard, more probably what you're used to seeing here. Okay. Buttons and images, you should know by now that buttons have different colors that you can use. All right, so primary is blue, secondary is gray, warning is kind of a yellowish, not or amber, whatever you want to call it, orange, I don't know. Danger is red, etc. All right, and as far as images, a fluid image, notice what it says. It makes the image automatically adjust to the size of the viewport. And you can round images, you can make them square, etc. There was something in here, and I mentioned it in class. I'm just trying to be consistent, and that is there's a Bootstrap setting, and I may have even passed it already. So read the chapter that previously in former versions of Bootstrap. Here it is. No, it isn't. All right. I think it's called font resizing or something like that, where it's automatically going to resize the size of your font based on the medium that's being used. This is something that has been defaulted to be turned on in Bootstrap, beginning in Bootstrap 5.0, where previously it was turned off. We'll see if, maybe we'll find it yet. Here's some stuff on margin and padding, and a couple of examples. All right. It says, now that you understand the basic Bootstrap classes and how they work, you should be able to understand the code for the view of the responsive future value app, which is shown in figure 310 right here. So the new stuff is the stuff that's in yellow. All right. I will expect when you take your test, and again, you'll have time to work on that next week, but I will expect that at that time, you will be using Bootstrap. All right. All right. Tables, we've talked about this before. The biggest thing with tables is there's a table class. You can automatically set up borders. You can do zebra striping. You can have a hover effect, etc. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. Here's the zebra striping, for example. Okay. Aligning and capitalizing text, I'll let you read that yourselves to basically, text upper, text lower, etc. Context, what they're saying here is you can set things up contextually. All right. And with that, they had mentioned here, it says the context classes that are available. The table shows the 8 classes for this. You can use color coding, etc. for these, and here they are. As I mentioned before, warning kind of an orangish yellow, danger is red, primary is blue, success is green, information is a different blue, almost a teal, I guess, and secondary is gray. Button groups are something that you may or may not use depending on the application. Personally, I'm not a fan. Icons and badges. All right. Well, many times today, what you're going to see in different applications is you won't even, what they show there with the home and the cart, you won't even see that anymore. You'll see the icons, especially when website real estate is at a premium. You don't have that much room anyway. All right. Here's something with a badge, so it's letting you know that in your cart you have two, there would be two things in there, for example. Button drop downs. I don't think I've ever used these. I suppose that in the right situation, they might be a nice thing to have. I don't know. I guess I've never thought about it because I've never used them. List groups. Now, when you look at this list group that's right here, this in many ways is very similar to one of the homework problems that you're going to have. I don't remember if it's a homework problem or a lab problem, so you might want to take the time to at least look at this list group. You're going to create something like this, okay? Alerts and breadcrumbs. Well, alerts should be dismissible like they show there, and they should be intuitive. In other words, if you're going to go to the trouble of creating an alert, they should make sense. All right, there should be a sensible reason for you using them, in other words. Breadcrumbs to show where you are, and you can also go forward or backwards based on these. So as it says, alerts let you provide contextual feedback for the app. Breadcrumbs give navigation links relative to where you currently are. Navigation bars. All right. You can set up navigation in a lot of different ways. This is explained up here. I'm not going to go through any of it. All right. Typically, you're going to make a nav bar. And again, as you know, there's plenty of stuff you can do with it, including, for example, showing it here. You can decide you can move some, most, or all of it to the right like this. You could move the whole thing to the right if you wanted. You could center this. Here is a hamburger menu so that when the menu or the app reaches a certain size, rather than getting these, you get the hamburger menu. And when you click on that, it will show you the stuff that's in here. So it would show you home products and about, for example. You can position these any way you want. Again, you can right justify them. You can left justify them. You can do whatever you need to or want to do with them. And that's it. So what I'm going to do in just a couple of minutes is I'm going to go back and I'm going to create like I did yesterday, but I'm going to really take my time and I want to show you how my machine is set up. It works. I know that yesterday, 2 of the 3 people who were watching the lecture live, they had problems getting their database to show when we did a migration. One person, it worked perfectly. So we'll go back and we'll take a look at how to do that together as a class. Okay? Now, next week you will have, Tuesday we will go over the test some more and I will give you some time to work on it. And then what I'm planning on doing is Wednesday going over chapter 4, how to develop a data-driven MVC app, about the same size as the other chapters. And then if we don't finish it Wednesday, we will finish it Thursday, but also on Thursday, we come up in here and do like about a 178 or so. Then on Thursday, we will go over chapter 5, much shorter chapter, about 20 pages, but we will talk about testing and debugging in some detail. All right, that's all I have for you now. I'll be back in a few minutes again to talk to you about using or creating the beginning of our test project.